Great. Fantastic then. Hello everyone. How are we all today? Hope we all well. So this is going to be a relatively short webinar on how you can join the OCDS community on GitHub. So if you think of yourselves as non-technical and you've heard us reference GitHub before and would like it demystifying a little bit, then you're in the right place. So just to start with, we would like to make sure that you are in the notes doc. We're keeping it like the interaction quite minimal. So instead of introducing yourselves on mic, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. So who you are, who you're representing, why you're interested in being here. And the notes will be provided in the notes doc as we go. Andy's quite kindly volunteered to be taking notes, and we can be using this later to ask questions, which we'll answer. And then any unanswered questions we have at the end of the webinar, we'll distribute via the mailing list. So make sure that you are subscribed to that. So why are we all here today? We use GitHub quite a lot in the Open Contracting Partnership and on the OCDS Help Desk and in the wider OCDS community. And we're aware that we have a part of our community who don't necessarily feel comfortable using GitHub at the minute because they're unfamiliar with it, or it's been presented as something that is quite technical, and maybe you work in a procurement office or a legal office and you're part of the OCDS community, but you feel that you can't quite contribute in this way yet. So the aim of this webinar is to inform you how you may participate in OCDS development via GitHub. So this is really getting to grips with how the OCDS standard itself is developed, how we learn from you, how we model procurement, and how you can participate in this process. And we're going to do this in a few ways. We're going to introduce how OCDS standard development occurs through GitHub itself. And then we're going to do some demonstrations on how to find relevant OCDS discussions on GitHub. And then we're going to do, as part of those demonstrations, we're going to show you how to contribute to existing discussions or create new OCDS discussions on the platform as well, so that you can participate with us where we are and in a way that we're all sort of involved together. So we've put a target length of this for an hour. We've never done one of these before, so we're either going to be bang on time or we're going to be slightly under, depending on how the demonstrations go and how many questions we have. So please do not hesitate. If you have questions, just stick them in the notes doc or in the chat, and we'll interact around them at the end. So the agenda today is we're going to start introducing how we use GitHub for OCDS. So why is it that we use GitHub? Why do you keep hearing this word? As part of that, we're going to introduce some very basic foundational concepts of Git and GitHub. These are going to be non-technical concepts for a non-technical audience. So if you're already technical, chances are you will understand these if they're new to you, or that you'll know about them already. Then we're going to take you right down to the foundations of getting started with GitHub itself. We're going to demonstrate how to create an account, how to adjust your profile, and then we're going to move on to the meat of the presentation, which is collaborating with us using GitHub. And that's going to take the form of how you can find issues in discussions, create issues, and then when to engage with us on GitHub versus when to interact with the help desk directly. We're going to have a little bit of a shout out to some of the non-standard repositories, so some of the OCDS tooling that we have on GitHub. And then we're going to end up with a Q&A session and some links to further resources as well. So without much further ado, I'd like to get us started. So as you all know, OCDS has three main components. It has the JSON schema, which is the actual technical code which defines what the OCDS standard is. We have the documentation, which includes implementation guidance and reference guidance on how to use the standard, different use cases, explanations of fields. And we also have the governance process, where the goal of this governance is to actually shepherd the development of the standard so that it better addresses the needs of its users, and through that ultimately better addresses the needs of the beneficiaries of public procurement. Our goal is to make public procurement better, so OCDS needs to continuously strive towards this goal by updating itself. And how this actually manifests on the ground, what this involves, are discussions with our community of both data users and data publishers who raise issues with us. They make proposals for changes to the standard, they discuss them with us, and then they engage in peer review of our proposed changes. And it is really this process that is facilitated by GitHub. So there are two main ways that we use GitHub. Although I'm very wary of it being seen as sort of two separate ways, these are two interrelated ways, and you can see them as a cycle, or you can see them as two sides of the same coin. At a technical level, what GitHub as a platform allows us to do is it will allow multiple people to collaborate on technical development in one place. So multiple developers from the community, from OCP, from the help desk, from implementers, from analysts, they can actually contribute code or contribute other improvements to the standard, such as towards the guidance, in a single place. And this is how we actually collect it all. And then what it also allows us to do is allows us to track these issues to fix bugs. We're going to talk a little bit about what the term issue means in a few slides time. But what this does is it allows us to help us develop new features. It allows us to track bugs. It allows us to start discussions on modeling. And these are often reported by a mixture of the OCP team, the OCDS help desk, and people like yourselves. So people involved in the OCDS community who are either directly in the trenches day to day, or are involved as part of our extended community through your intersecting work, but who still have a vested interest in making sure that OCDS is the best that it can be. It also allows us to do version control and change history. So this is a bit more technical, but I thought it would be good to just include it. So Git is ultimately a version control system. It allows us to define and release different versions of the standard. So to date, we've had two major versions of the standard. We have had OCDS 1.0, and we are currently on OCDS 1.1. And we've recently released a new patch called OCDS 1.15. And so what this does is it allows us to track the change history between different versions of the standard. People familiar with the OCDS schema might recognize the term change history as something within OCDS, and although it is achieved differently in the Git sense of the word, the concept is roughly the same. So just within OCDS describing a procurement will have a change history leading to a final version of the procurement. When we manage OCDS as a standard itself, it has a change history and has versions of the standard that develop through time as well. On the other side of this cycle or coin, GitHub also provides with us a social space to engage in discussions around the data standard. Now, these discussions can be about sort of quite high level procurement concepts. They can be technical discussions about what the standard's aims are and how to achieve those at a very granular level. And this is achieved through the creation and attendance of issues. And issues are discussion threads and bug reports on the standard is kind of the way that we use them in OCDS. The community, so this is you guys, you are actively encouraged to engage in existing issues when you find them, if they're relevant to you, and submit new ones where appropriate. And we'll go through that later on today as well. And when a new version of OCDS is released, the community may peer review it on GitHub and feedback changes to us as well. And what I really hope to have demonstrated here is the cyclical relationship between the two main ways that OCDS uses GitHub. So discussions and this issue reporting, they feed into that collaborative development, which will be collaboratively worked on, and then it will be result in a new version, and then that version will result in peer review, and then that results in an update to the standard and an update to the guidance, and then this in turn creates a new cycle of collaboration. So let's actually see this in practice. So if you've ever hung around on the OCDS standard documentation, you'll see that our documentation contains a change history, which shows the changes between different versions of the standard. So I've linked it here in the slides, which we'll distribute afterwards. But this is the page, which is our change history. As you can see, we have a list of iterative improvements to both documentation and some more technical things. And we have these strange hashtag numbers, which are links. So let's just pick one at random. Let's go with the second one, which is link bulk downloads in the getting started section. This takes us to a GitHub page. And this looks like quite a scary page if you're not a technical person. This is what's known as a pull request. And so James McKinney here has made a pull request in getting bulk and making some changes. And he's referenced here that it closes another issue that was opened before, where Charlie, who's a member of our community on the help desk, has noted a problem with bulk and individual file section in the getting started. And so there's some ambiguity here and some changes that needed to be made. So we've collaborated, James and Charlie have collaborated on addressing this, and then they've put it into this change, which we've managed at a technical level, and then pushed it to GitHub, where it's eventually made its way into the changelog. So that is how this is the changelog. That is like sort of a lens on our change process, and it collates and indexes all of the changes, individual changes that go into releasing new versions of the standard. And the goal of this webinar is to make obvious to you the ways these changes occur, and it's through collaborations on places like GitHub. So today, I want to start off with some very basic GitHub vocabulary. And so the reason that I've included this is I was once non-technical, and I was thrown in the deep end of a technical discussion or on a platform where I was asked to contribute some like sort of perspective on something, which is essentially what we're trying to ask you to do now. And I know what it feels like to be thrust into a new platform where the metaphors and the language are a little bit different to me. So I would just like to equip you with some words so that you know what's actually going on and you know what you're looking for when you're interacting with the site. So what is GitHub? What is Git? And you're not expected to know the ins and outs of how these work. But I've included some of the essential vocabulary which you will be interacting with on GitHub if you're interacting with the OCDS community. And this is vocabulary that we'll be using throughout this webinar. And so it's not too scary. Git itself is software that is used for version control of documents, of documentation, of code. And GitHub is a popular website for collaborating on projects using Git. So GitHub is effectively a space where projects may be collaborated on and where versions of projects can be stored. And this is how we use it in OCDS as well. The key terms that you'll need to know is that a repository, sometimes referred to as a repo, is like a project or folder that everyone is working in. It's basically, it contains the files that are changed. In the background, technical development occurs by making copies of these files on your own computer and then pushing them up. I doubt that's something that you guys will be needing to worry about, but if it helps, that is what people are doing in the background. And you've heard me use the term issue a few times as well. So an issue is a discussion or thread that has been started on the platform. It may be used to report a bug. So we saw before that Charlie had reported a bug in the documentation where she'd found some ambiguity, or it could be used to start a larger discussion. If you want to introduce a procurement concept, or if you've got concerns that OCDS's current modeling doesn't necessarily address your requirements, then you can start a larger discussion via an issue in GitHub. And then the one that is going to be perhaps least important for you guys to engage with, but you should know that it exists, is a pull request, is a request to have some changes accepted into the repository. So these will usually be referred to in issues and discussions, they may be shortened to PR. They're something that you probably don't need to worry yourselves about very directly if you consider yourself non-technical. You certainly won't be making them until you become a regular contributor to the standard. But it's something that you will see in discussions. So when you see the term pull request or PR, usually followed by one of those hashtag numbers, which is an issue number, then this is what people are doing. They've made some changes, perhaps collaboratively, perhaps taking it upon themselves and doing a small task, and then they've submitted it for peer review to have some changes accepted into the repository. So that's basically all the Git vocabulary that you'll need. So that will be enough to get you started for our purposes. And if you're like me, you like to know what's going on in the background. These resources are that I've listed here. So the Git book, an introduction to Git and GitHub, and some GitHub guides. They're good for basic introductions if you still feel like you need more after this webinar and you need to really understand what the platforms are. These require varying degrees of technical knowledge, and I've included them for completeness, but you are absolutely not expected to know this in order to help us develop OCDS. Or what we want is what's in your brains already. So just to take a moment to breathe, there are many ways to engage with us on GitHub. However, the most common ones are by far reporting problems with schema, code list and documentation, suggestions for new fields, codes or documentation, feedback on draft releases or changes, and discussions on modeling a particular procurement concept, procedure or mechanism. So for example, if you want to describe how electronic catalogs work in your context. So let's quickly rattle through these now so that you can sort of get a flavor for how we interact with people on GitHub around these things. So the first one is reporting problems. People will often use issues to report problems with the OCDS schema, its code list or its documentation. A problem can be discussed and it can be resolved in the issue thread, and a change may be made to address this. So I've just highlighted some examples to go through. We'll pick the first one. So here, this one is closed. This one has already been resolved, but James has highlighted that the versioned release schema is inconsistent with the merge rules. So what he's done is he's filed a bug report, and he's described what the issue is. I won't go through it in detail. And then he has put some notes in for discussion, but he's also noted that a simpler solution has been found. So he's updated this. And then James has been continuously updating the issue. This is a bit of a weird example in that there's only one person involved in the discussion. James is very active in developing the standard, and in fact, it's his job. But you'll find quite a lot of examples of people with issues with multiple people collaborating on them. So let's try and find a one now. One sec. My Zoom has decided that it doesn't want me to click anything on the page to get back to the slides. Can you still see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Fantastic. Great, that's a bit better. Another way that we interact with people on GitHub is suggestions. So you might, rather than having a problem or spotting something that you think we need to address that we already have, you may use GitHub to suggest new fields, new codes that need to be added to our code list, or in fact highlight the need for some more documentation. And this really includes the discussions on modeling procurement concepts in OCDS. So I mentioned before that people will suggest new fields or engage us in a lengthier discussion about modeling procurement concepts in OCDS. These can be wrapped into the same barrel of suggestions. So the design and the implications of these fields, these codes and the documentation, we coordinate it in the issue, and the suggestion may be accepted for a future version of OCDS. So let's have a look at one here towards the end. 883, we've got James again. We have add a class for natural person. So we have a problem, we have a background, and we've got James's contributions to the discussion, and we have a proposal. We've then got Paul Boroday, who's a member of our community, who I believe is based in Moldova, working on the M-Tender platform. So he's contributed a bit of how the code that they're using around modeling a natural person. And then we've got some discussion with James, with Colin. I don't know this person directly, so we're just going to call them Woodbine. They've contributed as well. So you end up with a long discussion. Now, this is quite a technical discussion, so you'll see examples of code. However, there is no reason that you as a non-technical person, or more accurately, you as a procurement expert, could not jump into this discussion based on what James or what others have said, and then say, hey, I don't know much about the code, but this is how this occurs in our context in terms of legally or in government systems or databases that you're more familiar with. So there's definitely lots of different layers that you can add to a discussion. It doesn't have to purely be technical. The next way that we use GitHub for OCDS development is feedback and peer review. So when we release a draft release of OCDS, we invite peer review on it, and we generally do that before we're expecting to release a new version. So what peer review does is it gives a chance for the community to see the next version of the standard, to ask questions, to catch errors such as typos or some small oversights, and suggest small changes before release. So I've got some examples here. So we've got Tim Davies back in 2017. So this is way back for the OCDS 1.1 upgrade, and we're well past this now. And then we have some engagement. This is all Tim, but we have various issues being assigned. We've got updates being issued, and then let's see if we've got another one that we can spot. That's day 966. So this is one of the more recent ones, the OCDS 1.1.5, which is a patch release. We have James adding all of the commits, which are the small changes to this. We've got some more here. And then people can automatically, well, sorry, not automatically, people can jump into this thread and contribute peer review. It doesn't look like there was a lot of sort of community engagement on this particular release, but there's certainly been a lot of community engagement on our peer review process in the past. So I'm just going to take a short breath now so I can get some water. And then we'll start on the getting started with GitHub. So now hopefully you'll go, right, Matt, I get it. With OCDS, I can, on GitHub, I can, once I'm signed up, I can create bug reports to unpick problems that I've had with the standard or the guidance if it's unclear. I can suggest new things, and I can introduce procurement discussions, and I don't need to have a technical understanding of sort of digital systems in order to do so. I can use my technical understanding of legal or procurement expertise, and I can engage with the peer review process. So when there is a new version of OCDS in the pipeline, then I can jump in and I can review it, and I can say, hey, this is ambiguous, or hey, this is a small oversight. I can do that at sort of multiple levels as well. How do you actually get started on GitHub though? So I'm going to demonstrate signing up to GitHub and finding our OCDS repositories now. If you encounter GitHub for the first time, it often asks you if you want to sign up for a premium account. And if you're signing up as an individual, you will likely not need it. Premium accounts are largely to have private repositories. So open contracting does everything in the open. We don't have any private repositories, and you, as an individual, if you're coming into GitHub just to engage with us, it's very, very unlikely you will develop the need or the use case for a premium account. So let's actually get started on that. I actually have a GitHub account, but what I'm going to do is create a new one just for the purposes of this demonstration. So we have OCDS GitHub demo, and then I have created an email address, a temporary email address, in order to navigate this. However, Zoom is very unhelpfully blocking that bit on my screen. There we go. My email address is ocdshelpdeskexamples@outlook.com. This email address will be deleted after this. This is just to demonstrate. And you can have a password.
I think you meant to write at outlook.com.
Oh, yes, you are correct. Good spot. Spot the deliberate mistake. Oh, it won't let me do that. Fantastic. We need to solve a puzzle. Oh, I don't know. Does anyone know what the spiral galaxy is? I'm going to presume it's this one. Great. So it's allowing us to create an account. What kind of, oh, it's asking us, let's say, other. So GitHub is actually provided I want to collaborate with my team, and I am interested in procurement. So we need to verify the email address. It's sent already. Great. So what do we want to do first? We want to edit our profile. So GitHub has a habit of sending quite a lot of notifications. So the first thing you want to be able to do is edit your profile and your settings. So you go to settings, you go to notifications, and we recommend that you turn off automatically watch teams, and then you turn off all of your alerts. These will be less relevant to you anyway. You can only receive notifications for things that you feel are relevant to you. So comments on issues and pull requests are probably ones that are relevant to you. Pull request reviews and pull request pushes are probably less relevant. And you probably would like to be notified via email, although you can turn off email notifications as well. The next thing you probably want to do on GitHub is to actually find where open contracting is. So we do this via the GitHub search. So this is probably the screen that you'll be presented with. We can just find, you can just search for open contracting, and you'll see, oh no, who's this Open Zeppelin who's taken the lead spot. However, just down here, nice and plain English, the open contracting standard. So you can just jump in here. This is actually the open contracting repository. If you click on open contracting, you can see all of our repositories. So we have the open contracting standard repository, which is where we'll be focusing the bulk of this webinar. We also have, if you engage with OCDS extensions, there is the OCDS extension template, the extensions repository, and we have repositories for all of our tools as well. So we'll give a shout out to some of the more popular ones of those later. But I just wanted to say, this is the standard repository. This is actually what OCDS is in the background. So this might look a little bit intimidating to you. but this is what OCDS is, and this is what you'll be engaging with. So let's just jump back to our presentation. So some practical tips are to adjust your notification settings to only get updates about what you're interested in. I've provided a link in the slides so you can jump straight to our organization. It's quite simple to remember. It is github.com/open contracting with a hyphen in the middle. And then issues about the OCDS standard should be raised in the standard repository, and issues about extensions in the extensions explorer should be raised in the OCDS extensions repository. So if we go and have a, oh, I do apologize for this. Zoom is just being incredibly aggressive with taking over my screen today. Just close that. So if you have, if you want to discuss the open contracting standard, you can do it on this repository, and then we'll just open up another window. And OCDS extension. So if you're a user of an OCDS extension, and you'll know if you are or not because it'll be incredibly relevant to your context, then you can raise an issue on this repository as well. So it's just the same thing, OCDS extensions rather than OCDS standard. That's better. And here are some useful quick links to popular repositories. So if you're, it's all well and good me presenting it now. If in a week's time you go, oh, I wish Matt had gave us some links so that we could quickly find some relevant repositories, here they are there. So we're going to be providing you with these slides afterwards as a reference. So the next thing you'll need to know is how to find and contribute to discussions on the standard. So in terms of finding issues, it is a very simple stepwise process. You can locate the standard or extensions repository, which you can do here. You can navigate to the issues tab, and then you search for the topic using key terms and labels. So let's do a demonstration. So I'm a procurement official, and I would like to suggest a new field to disclose members of the award committee. So what I do, this looks like a standard issue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on the open contracting standard, and then I'm going to go on issues. And then I'm going to see if there is, so what are the keywords that we have? We would, new field, members of the award committee. So I'm going to start off nice and broad by going awards committee. Oh, we don't have anything, so I'm going to use a synonym. I'm just going to say award committee. And we have a current issue that's open for adding a class for natural persons. So we're going to open this, and then we are going to read this to determine whether it is relevant to my needs. So presently, the entries in the parties array are only organization objects. But if any natural persons, we need to represent natural persons potentially, and so we potentially need to make a change to the schema with the exception of sole traders. So we have a background for this, so we can go and read through this issue as well, which is an older issue started in 2016 about how organizations are handled. And then in terms of what belongs in the parties array, we describe the field as information on parties who are involved in the contracting processes, which could include different types of individuals, such as legal representatives or owners. But I'm trying to find if there's something here about awards committee. So we can just find it in the page. So here we have a very recent example from the 21st of July of an example of an award committee member data from Taiwan, and it included the following fields for each member. So the point I'm trying to drive home here is that if you have a question, it's a good idea to search for existing issues, and then you can find existing discussions, and then you can contribute to it. So unlike you, I'm not a procurement expert. I'm an OCDS expert, and I don't know what it is about my context of the award committee that I need to represent. But you can just go in and leave a comment. So you could say, hey, in this context, I operate in this country or in this jurisdiction, and I need to represent award committee members in this particular way. Here's the types of information I need to represent. Here are the cases that this occurs in, and here are my suggestions for what it needs to do. And then that can spark off a discussion around how to model it in OCDS. There are other things we should do as well. One sec. We shouldn't just rely on the one issue, so we can have a look for just committees. It still comes up on that. We can have a look at for people. So pre-qualification for multi-use list doesn't look like it's relevant to us. This is the issue that we had before. And these are other issues that do not appear relevant to us. We can also, GitHub has also added this flag for is open. And what this does is it prevents us from looking at issues which have been closed. But this might be relevant to us if we are asking a question of OCDS that might have already been answered. So you can remove this, and we can go award committee again, and we can see that there are some more issues that have been opened. So, for example, milestones, and there was actually an extension request a little while ago to include details of a review committee. So what that might tell us is that we need to go and read this and see what decision had been made. And broader to that, they're collecting additional information on bids and assessment process. So I imagine that is a larger discussion about the assessment process that might have information about how awards committees might be modeled in OCDS. On OCDS, on GitHub, you can watch and reply to discussions. So you'll automatically be subscribed to an issue if you click the subscribe button on it, and you can unsubscribe anytime. So I'm just going to find that now. So we can subscribe to this. That's closed though. So let's go back, and this one we've determined is quite relevant for our context. So we're going to subscribe to this issue. So now every time there is an update to this thread or this discussion, we will be informed directly in our inbox. And you can add to the issue by commenting. You can either use the web interface, or you can reply to the email notification. So when GitHub sends you a notification, it actually says you can reply using email if you feel you're more comfortable with that. It's not something I've done myself because I find it simple enough to use the GitHub interface. But if you're more comfortable replying via email, then this is definitely possible, and you should definitely do it. And you shouldn't be losing out on any interaction if you're just wanting to participate in the discussion. So some practical tips to find issues. You can actually narrow your search by using a label. So let's have a look here. This didn't have any labels on, so we can get rid of that. However, this has two labels for focus documentation and schema. And you can actually have a look at all of the labels in the issues. So if you have a particular area of interest, or if you want to filter your search even further, so if you're particularly excited about code lists and you want to see discussions on codes, then you can filter all of the discussions that we have ongoing about codes. So if you have something to contribute regarding document types, so perhaps in your procurement context, you have a particular type of legal or procurement document that you feel it is important for OCDS to know about and to model appropriately, then you can get involved on the discussion there. That's one very practical tip that I use quite a lot when I'm engaging with OCDS. And you can search closed and historic issues by removing is open from the search terms. We actually demonstrated that, and it revealed some interesting discussions that we might be wanting to read up on. You should search multiple times using synonyms to cover the bases, to get a variety of issues to sort of build up your internal picture of what's going on. And you should read discussions in linked issues when relevant to you. So we saw an example of that, where the issue raised by James linked off to a broader discussion that was raised at an earlier point in time, which had some impacts on it. And you can watch an issue via the subscribe button if you want to keep informed of updates. If you have any doubt about finding issues, or if you're still not feeling particularly confident, then we are more than happy to do this for you. And you can get in touch with data@opencontracting.org. Just shoot the help desk an email, say, hey, I'm trying to find these issues on GitHub or issues around this. You know the issues better than us. There, please, can you help me filter them? And we'll probably be able to come up with about 2 or 3 to meet your needs, and 2 or 3 discussions that might be worth you contributing to or reading. The next thing for your OCDS GitHub journey is how to create new issues. So creating a new issue is also very straightforward. However, you should always check existing issues first. So let's demonstrate with another scenario. So in my country, procurements are bundled as a package, but are not lots. So they're very distinct from lots. They share a package number, but they have multiple buyers for the procurement. So that's obviously quite an interesting case. Let's proceed with seeing what we can find. So we're going to look at open issues. And let's have a look at package. Integrate blog posts, publishing historical data. That's a technical issue on packages. No. So let's have a look for procurement package. Procurement plans might be relevant. So we're not really talking about plans, we're discussing the release of a tender which have bundled together lots of different procurements under one identifier. So we might call this tender groups. There is a guidance to move lots into the release schema. However, we're not talking about lots. We've said that these are distinct procurements with multiple buyers, but oh, that's another keyword. So we can search for multiple buyers. We have pre-qualification for multi-use list, maybe not appropriate. We have clarify contacts description. So let's have a quick look at that to make sure that it isn't. Nope, it's about contacts. I don't think we have one. So the next thing to do is to actually create an issue. So we're not going to create an issue on the OCDS standard repo in this demonstration. But what I have done is I have set up an example repository, which is empty. It's set up just for the purposes of this demonstration to show how simple it is to create an issue. So you can create a new issue. So you should have a very clear title, procurement packages with multiple buyers, not lots. And then you would give information about your context here. If you have examples, documentation, legal guides, or codes that you can cite, you can submit those, and all you have to do is click submit. You'll be automatically subscribed. Now you should ideally add a label to it. Because this is an example repository, there aren't actually any labels in it. However, if you go to the open contracting repository, when you create a new issue, you will be, oh no, we can't do that. You'll be asked to add a label to it, and you should have a look at the labels that we have in order to narrow down the discussion to the discussion that you want to have. So think about when you were on the other side of that, searching for things, trying to narrow your search down to what's relevant. So we have lots of labels to choose from. They're pretty self-explanatory, but again, if you are in doubt, you should just get in touch with the help desk, because we can walk you through which labels to add to an issue. So some practical tips are to always check for existing issues, both open and closed. So removing that is open from the search terms. To use a very clear title for your issue, and to describe your use case, the bug, or the model, in this case, clearly in the issue body. Apply labels when you're possible, and if in doubt, check with the help desk before opening the issue. So I'm getting quite conscious of time, but I think we're on track to finish within the hour. So now you might be asking, Matt, you kept telling me to get in touch with the help desk, and you told me that the help desk team members are also very active on GitHub, or at least on the OCDS repositories. How do I know to get in touch with the help desk, or how to get in touch with you via GitHub? So the interactions on GitHub are supposed to be for standard development. And if you need support with your implementation, so if you're engaging with us to implement OCDS as part of your OGP commitment or another requirement, then, or if you need help understanding the standard, then you should contact the help desk directly. And you should use GitHub if you found a problem or a bug in the standard or our documentation or one of our tools. Alternatively, if you want to start a discussion about a new use case, or a procurement concept, or if you want to propose a new field to OCDS, then GitHub is the place to do that. And the golden rule I've hopefully been drilling down is that if you're in doubt, you should just contact the help desk. We often do discuss with people how to model concepts in OCDS via the help desk, but we often do that by sort of giving them an initial reply, and we might raise a GitHub issue for you to open the discussion out to the community. So if you don't feel particularly confident in opening a GitHub issue, and you should, if I wasn't clear on how to do it, then that's on me, and I'm happy to answer any questions and go back over things at the end of this. But you might still want us to say, hi, Matt, I want to, do you know how does the help desk engage around this in the past? And we can use our knowledge in order to sort of help you navigate GitHub. We're happy to set up the issue for you, and then send you the link so that you can start contributing that way, and helping you to reach more people who are interested in that particular issue as well. So if in doubt, you can just contact the help desk. So I've got an example here. So I need to know how to use a particular field in my OCDS publication. Does this sound like a help desk issue or a GitHub issue? So I'm not going to request an answer from the community, but I'll just let it hang for a second and you can test yourselves. It is a help desk issue, and that is a question about understanding the standard, and it is implementation specific. So you should get in touch with the help desk directly. The next question is, I think OCDS should include a new field for government branches. This one should be easy through process of elimination. The thing to do there is to open a GitHub issue. And in fact, that is a real issue that was opened by a member of the community. We're reaching the end now. So I just want to give a very short rundown on collaborating on OCDS tools via GitHub. So if you are a regular or active user of some of the tools we have for producing OCDS data, converting OCDS data, analyzing OCDS data, then you may want to engage with us around those. These tools are also managed openly and collaboratively via GitHub, and we appreciate people using this space to inform us of bugs, to explain use cases, or to help us develop an understanding of your goals, to share your experience using the tools, and to suggest improvements or features. So if you take what we've just learned about how you should engage with OCDS as a standard on GitHub, then you can apply those same contexts and those same lessons to our tool repositories. And I've just provided a link here to some common OCDS tools. So we have the data review tool, which you're probably familiar with if you've engaged with OCDS much at all. This is our validation tool. This is the repository. These are the issues. So we can improve the landing page. We're going to be moving logos around. And for context, this is the website that this powers. So if you've used our data review tool before to inspect your OCDS data and determine if it is if it's valid and if it's saying what you expect it to say, then this is what this is the place to do it. Another popular tool is OCDS Kit, and then one of my favorite tools is OCDS Toucan. So OCDS Toucan is a sort of very friendly way to, it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife.
Hi, everyone.
Am I back?
Just checking. Yes, Matt, you're back. You were silent just as you were about to start talking on OCDS Toucan. I wondered if it was my connection, so that's why I didn't say it immediately. Pardon me.
No problem. So I should have shared my screen again.
Yes, we can see your screen. Thank you.
Fantastic. Sorry about that, folks. So I was just shouting out to OCDS Toucan as the Swiss Army knife of OCDS. It's quite a handy little tool. If you're more technical and you've got some OCDS data, you can, or if you've just somehow happened to find yourself with OCDS data, you can use it to create release packages, combine them. You can generate spreadsheets. You can convert it between various serializations of OCDS. Sort of not directly related to this webinar, but I just wanted to give a nice shout out to Toucan. It's quite a nice little tool, and it's quite user friendly for non-technical people if you're sort of manipulating data and you happen to be a data user in the audience as well. And as well as that, we have our Kingfisher suite of tools, which allow you to collect, process, and analyze data using Kingfisher Collect, Process, and Views, respectively. And we also, Flatten tool is an important tool in the OCDS ecosystem, although it should be noted that it's not OCDS specific. And if you create the community over at Open Data Services Cooperative are very enthusiastic as well. If you end up using Flatten tool, you can go create issues using the knowledge we've shared today, although be aware that that's not a direct OCDS or open contracting community. So just to bring it all together in the last sort of few minutes that we have together, we started with the changelog, and now we've kind of peeked behind the curtain to see how these changes actually occur. OCDS itself changes to meet the demands of you, who are the community of data users, the community of publishers, the community of implementers, perhaps of third-party systems, and the wider community, those interested in keeping procurement open and fair. These changes are enacted via collaboration on the GitHub platform. And this happens by discussing issues and working together on ways to address them through peer review. On the platform, this takes the form of discussions and reports, which are accomplished by opening issues on primarily the OCDS standard repository. And we collect these changes and discussions together. We action them collaboratively, and we index the changes that we've made in the OCDS changelog. So really, we've come full circle now from where we started. So I would just like to close out quickly. We'll answer some of the questions from the notes document. I saw chat lighting up a little bit before, but I've not had a chance to look in the notes document. But I would just like to shout out that you should join the mailing list following this link, and we'll also copy it into the notes document. And if you have any questions, or you'd like any support with an implementation, or you'd like further support on using GitHub, you should just feel free to contact the help desk at data@opencontracting.org. So I'll hand over to Andy now. If there's been any questions, I think Andy will be your voice to voice them, and then I'll do my best to answer them here and now. While we'll allocate, say, 5 minutes, and then the rest of them we'll send out via the mailing list.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Matt. Thankfully, we don't have any questions. So that might be a reflection that people fully understood or had no clue what you were talking about. What I'd like to think is the former. I do have one question. I noticed when we were raising a new issue that we couldn't add our own labels. So is it only existing labels that can be added that have been created by the OCP team that manages it?
I believe it depends really on which repository you're in. My understanding is for the open contracting one, you should be using the labels that have been set out, although you can probably suggest new labels using an issue as well if you're engaged to the point where that becomes necessary. So we can actually try that out if you want. Let's go to the standard repository now. New issue. I'm very wary of creating issues on the repository because I don't want to mess up the existing discussions. Let's just create one example. Lorem ipsum me. So let's submit it. Labels. I believe that we cannot add labels. It might be the community at OCP and the help desk who adds the labels to this, to these to help the filtering. So I don't think we can add labels ourselves. No.
Okay. All right. Thank you for clearing that up. And we have another question coming from Kay. She's asking, do you have an estimate of how many people in the OCDS GitHub community are technical versus less technical?
No numbers off the top of my head. I would say on GitHub, I would estimate probably around 2/3 are likely to be technical, although this is just spitballing based on my interactions. I can't have any concrete numbers. That is a really interesting point. The reason that we've started this webinar is to try and get people who describe themselves as non-technical to get more involved in the community on GitHub. So I actually, so when we say non-technical, in this context, we mean people who do not write or are not power users of digital tools, such as programmers. However, if you are working in procurement, or if you're working in law, or if you're a civil society organization, you have technical knowledge about those things, and so it is important that you contribute to GitHub as well. But yes, to answer your question, I would estimate around 2/3 of our community on GitHub are probably would describe themselves as technical in the digital sense, and we're trying to like sort of get that to about 50% probably.
All right, thanks, Matt. And I think kind of related to that question. So if, say, a non-technical person has proposed an implementation of a procurement law that they think should be reflected in the OCDS, and maybe that change is not immediately accepted, and say that issue maybe becomes a backlogged one or a historical one, is there somewhere that historical issues are stored in the GitHub? Is that where maybe the change log?
Yep. So historical issues. What we mean by when we say historical issues, and that's the term that I use to mean an issue that has been closed. Even if it makes its way into the backlog, then it will still be open, so it will still be an active discussion. And we prioritize with a collaborative process. So if we see, if you are non-technical and you've opened up an issue, say about a procurement concept or a change that you want to see made to the standard, then the engagement on that and the applicability of that to like sort of multiple use cases or multiple national jurisdictions will like sort of be used to determine how actively it is worked on. And then, yeah, so in terms of that's how the backlog tends to work. So if there's less like sort of urgency around things, if it only affects a small number of people, then it's probably more appropriate to model it in an extension, in which case then the extension repository would be the best place to like move the issue to, and the OCP team and the help desk team will facilitate that. So if we spot that it is urgent for you but not urgent for sort of procurement as a whole to model this, then we'll recommend making an issue in the extension repository, or we'll do it ourselves, and then we can move the discussion to that more local context, and it will become part of that. So for those who don't know, OCDS has has extensions which are collected in the Extensions Explorer, and behind the scenes. So to take, for example, there's our multiple buyers example, or maybe you want to add metrics to your OCDS implementation. So this explains for implementers how to implement the metrics extension. And what you can do is you can actually peek behind the curtain to go to the extensions repository via GitHub, and then you can look at the actual individual extension. Let's just take participation fees, and then you can see if there's any open issues here as well. So you can actually engage with us on extensions, which are like sort of things that you can do to like add extra functionality to OCDS that isn't included. And we're actually planning a webinar, 2 webinars on OCDS extensions in October. So if this is something that interests you, then you should definitely come along to those.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Matt. And I think what I get from this is that with our GitHub community, no knowledge about OCDS is actually lost. It's actually
perfect. That's a really good way of putting it. Thank you, Andy.
All right. So thank you all for being a part of this webinar. As we mentioned at the start, this webinar was recorded and we will be uploading that on YouTube, and we'll be sending it to you as participants via email. And you can share with your larger network of publishers and users of OCDS, or people that want to begin the open contracting journey, to show the different platforms where we have a community for you to relate with other users in the field. Thank you all very much, and have enjoyed the rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy, for facilitating.
All right.